Hello guys, and welcome back to TeesCloudTalks. Like I always say, go grab you something to drink, tea, coffee, water, hot chocolate, anything, even snacks if you've got them. Literally nothing's off limits at TeesCloudTalks. So just relax for a bit, no pressure. This is just a conversation. It's been a little while I've actually sat down and recorded an episode. I think it's been about 2 months since the last one, and today I just wanted to come back and have a relaxed chat. Like, I didn't want to just jump straight into a technical topic. I wanted to talk about where I've been, where my head's at, and where I want to take TeesCloudTalks going forward. So over the last couple of months I've taken a bit of a break, a big break at that. I've made a decision to actually focus on something else that was very important to me, because I've realized that just trying to do too many things at once can become very overwhelming. And I know myself, when I have too many things going on, sometimes I feel like I'm spreading myself too thin, and I'm not giving anything the attention it deserves. So I decided to slow things down a little bit. But during that time I realized something, like I actually missed this. I missed sitting down and talking about AWS. I missed learning about cloud. I missed creating content, because TeesCloudTalks was never about pretending that I knew everything. It was about the journey. It was about taking things that can seem complicated and breaking things down into something easier to understand. Because when I first started learning AWS, I remember how confusing it felt. There was so many services, so many new words, so many different concepts, and sometimes you're just thinking, where do I even begin? And that's the reason I created TeesCloudTalks, to make AWS feel a little less intimidating. And coming back, I don't want to put pressure on myself to make every episode this massive production. Sometimes we'll have technical episodes. Sometimes we'll look at AWS services. Sometimes we'll go through labs. And sometimes we'll just sit down like this and have a conversation, because I think conversations are important too. So today I just wanted to talk about something I wish I knew before I started my AWS journey. And that is, you don't have to learn everything at once. When you first start AWS, it can feel like there is so much information. You see hundreds of different services. You hear people talking about architecture, networking, security, database, automation, and the list just goes on and on and on. And it can honestly feel a bit daunting. It may make you feel like you have to understand everything before you can even begin. But the truth is, you don't. You have to start with the foundations and understand what the cloud is, understand how the servers work, understand networking, understand storage, understand security basics, then build from there. So one thing I've learned during my journey is that AWS starts making more sense when you stop looking at services as separate things and start understanding how they connect together. For example, you might learn about S3 and think, okay, it's just storage. But then you start seeing how it connects with applications, security, permissions, and other AWS services. That's when things start to click. And another thing I wish I knew is that labs are important, very important. Reading and watching videos is great, but actually going into AWS and trying to learn things yourself is where you really start learning. And sometimes things won't work. Like, sometimes you'll get errors. Sometimes you spend even hours trying to figure out something. But those moments are where the learning happens, because you're not just memorizing information, you're actually learning how to troubleshoot, you're learning how things actually work. And that's a big part of working in the cloud. You don't need to know everything. You need to know how to find answers. You need to be curious. And you just need to keep learning, keep building. That's something I want TeesCloudTalks to represent. A place where we learn together, where we break down complicated concepts, where it's okay to ask questions. It's okay. I want this to be a space where you feel comfortable to ask questions, even if it sounds stupid. It's really not stupid, trust me. Because everyone starts somewhere. Even the people who look like experts now had a point where they didn't even understand anything. Like VPCs, availability zone, databases, compute, and the list just keeps going on and on and on. But I did want to take some time to talk about one AWS service that I think is extremely important, especially when we're talking about cloud security, and that service is AWS IAM, identity and access management. Now, when you first hear the words identity and access management, it can actually sound very technical. But the simple way to think about IAM is who can access what and what are they allowed to do. And honestly, this is one of the most important questions in cloud security, because imagine you're running a business and you have all your applications, your data, and your resources inside AWS. You don't want everyone to have access to everything, but you need control, right? You need to know who can log in. You need to know what actions they can perform. And that's where IAM comes in. So think of IAM like the security guard at the entrance of a building. The security guard checks who you are you allowed to enter, and what areas are you allowed to access. So in AWS, IAM helps you manage things like users, groups, roles, and permissions. So for example, maybe a developer needs access to create applications, but they don't need permissions to delete important company data. Or maybe an application needs permission to access a database, but it doesn't need access to everything else in the AWS account. So IAM helps you create those boundaries. And one thing I think is really important when learning AWS is understanding that security isn't something you add at the end. Security should be part of the design from the beginning. It's not just about creating resources, it's about creating them safely. And that's why IAM is such an important service to understand, because whether you're working with EC2, S3, Lambda, or databases, permissions are always going to matter. So the more I learn about AWS, the more I realize that cloud isn't just about knowing services, it's understanding how those services connect together and how to use them properly. And security is a huge part of that. It's one of our, pillars in our well-architected framework. So that's just a simple introduction to IAM. Maybe in a future episode, we'll actually jump into a lab and create users, roles, and policies so we can see how the IAM, works in practice. But for today, I just wanted to have a conversation and introduce the idea. So yeah, I'm back. I'm taking things one step at a time, no pressure. Not trying to do everything at once, but just enjoying the process again. So if you've been here from the start, thank you for sticking around. And if you're new to TeesCloudTalks, welcome. I also wanted to take a moment to mention something I've been working on with TeesCloudTalks. I've created a website where you can actually get involved with the journey. So one of the things I've realized when learning AWS is that sometimes you can come across a concept, a service, or a topic that just doesn't make sense straight away. You might watch videos, read documentation, and still think, okay, but can someone just explain this in a simple way? So I wanted to create a place where you can actually submit your concepts that you find difficult or confusing. Maybe there's an AWS service you've heard about but don't fully understand. Maybe there's a cloud concept that feels complicated. Send it in. The idea is that we can break it down together and make it easier to understand. This isn't just about me talking at you. I want TeesCloudTalks to be a place where we can actually collaborate together, learn from each other, and explore these concepts. So you can also connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to follow my cloud journey or have conversations about AWS and cloud computing. The website will be linked in the description down below, so feel free to check it out, submit a concept, and be a part of the community, because at the end of the day, everyone starts somewhere, and sometimes the question you think is a simple question might actually be something a lot of other people are wondering too. So yeah, grab your tea, open your laptop, and let's keep building.